Hi, everybody. Welcome to Choice Hacking. I'm Jen Clinehens, and this is another email psychology breakdown. Today, we're looking at an email from AG1, also known as Athletic Greens. If you aren't familiar with this product, basically, it's just a greens mix. So different vegetables and fruits and minerals and vitamins that you put in water, mix up, that gives you a little bit of an energy boost and your recommended amount of daily vitamins. Athletic Greens is used by a lot of different people, not just athletes. And you may have heard one of their ads on a podcast. Athletic Greens seems to be everywhere these days, so I thought it would be a good brand for us to take a look at, see what's working in their email marketing, what's not, and the psychology behind why. Before we get started, what you see on the screen are all the points we're going to cover in today's video. So if you want to take a quick screenshot and kind of keep this for your notes or records, you're more than welcome to do that. Great. So let's start with the subject line, as we often do. Now, the subject line for this email is "Best practice makes perfect." To be honest with you, this is the main thing I would change in this email. I would suggest something that uses more concrete language. So like 3 ways to make athletic greens a daily habit. I definitely think it's worth testing something that is a little bit more substantive in terms of what it's telling users that this email might be about. Even better if it poses a question or opens a mental loop that people need to open the email to solve or get the answer to. That is going to really improve their open rates. The psychology principle here is something called concrete language or concrete language, depending on your accent, I guess. So being specific, definite, and vivid in language rather than vague in general. So using concrete language instead of more abstract language has been shown to increase conversion anywhere between 4x to 10x. So it's a really powerful tool. Great, let's move on to the header language. It says, "Let's make a habit." And then under that, in case you can't read it, it says, "Follow along for our top 3 tips on how to make AG1 your new daily habit." Now, I do think that this header copy does help solidify that purpose of the email. And interestingly, I think this makes the subject line look even weaker in comparison because the objective of this email is really clear. Like, okay, you're going to help me understand how to get athletic greens into my daily rituals or habits. And that just pulls on the principle of habit, right? And in fact, there has been some research done around why new products fail. And a lot of times people will buy a new product once and they'll just kind of forget to use it. It doesn't become an ingrained habit. And obviously Athletic Greens knows that this is a danger. And in fact, they are a subscription, mostly a subscription business. But what they're trying to do is get you to get that monthly delivery of Athletic Greens. And so they know if you're not actually using it every single day, you're going to end up with the classic subscription problem, which is it starts to pile up in your house. And then you go, and you cancel it and you never rejoin. So they know it's in their best interests. I would also assume that the product is going to work better if you're getting the vitamins in your system every single day. Choice Hacking is not a medical establishment, so I can't tell you if this is actually good for you or not. But it is in their best interest as a business to get you to use this every day. So now let's move on to how they've presented this idea of building a habit with their product. Great. So now if we start to look down into the body of the email, we've got this: 1, start in the morning; 2, take on an empty stomach; and then 3, be consistent. And each one of these has some body copy that kind of elaborates on what they mean. The step-by-step breakout is a really good way to kind of visually chunk the idea of how do I create a habit. It makes it simple. If you haven't heard of chunking, basically chunking is just this idea that if you have a lot of information to convey or people need to learn and they need to take in or just understand, you can take this big sort of blob of information and start to chunk it, not only visually, but by subject matter, right? So the way that they've chunked it here, you can see they've kind of got a gray box, a white box, a gray box. So they visually chunked it. They've got the 1, 2, 3. So they've used the numbers to chunk that information. But they've also done it in a step-by-step way, right? So the first chunk is start in the morning. And actually, if you can't see the body copy here, it says, give your body a nutrient lift first thing in the AM to set yourself up for the day ahead. We find this is the easiest time to work into most routines. That just makes it easier for people to kind of take in the information and understand start in the morning, take on an empty stomach, be consistent. Okay. There are some issues with this body copy and the way it's designed. First, and the most obvious thing is it is a lot of text. A better solution would be for this is actually a GIF that would play through all 3 of the steps. Now, you have to think through things like deliverability and how many people don't have images in their email. So you would probably, under that GIF, want to have something like this where everything's kind of written out. But if you had a GIF in the header, a lot like the Jones Row Beauty GIF, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description below, where they had a GIF that showed you how to use their product in 3 easy steps. That would get the meaning of what they're trying to convey to you. You would understand it much quicker. And To be honest with you, you're not going to get a lot of people who are going to scroll down into this email and read everything. But if you have a GIF that's explaining it visually without them having to actually go through and do the reading, or if they are doing the reading, it's supplementing something they've already seen, reiterating it in their mind, drilling it into their head. That's a better strategy than just kind of listing out everything. Great. So let's keep talking a little bit about this body copy because there is a little bit to unpack here. Now, the images that they have chosen for 1, 2, and 3, with the exception of 2, because 2 is really good, I think 1 and 3 aren't really doing a job, right? They're not showing customers like interacting with the product. They're not showing what they're talking about. So like start in the morning. I mean, this is a great picture. It looks like somebody's, about to go for a run. But if they had a picture of the same woman getting up out of bed and hitting the alarm and her athletic greens is like right there ready to mix up, that does much more of a job for this product than just this image where I'm kind of having to assume that she's going for a run and it's the morning time. So really making sure that every image that we have in any of these emails is doing a lot of heavy lifting, because a lot of people, again, just will not read the text. So you need them to be able to take away the meaning from the images that are in this email without them having to go through and spend a lot of time and kind of read every single thing. Now, one other thing I do want to mention here, it's one of my favorites and I talk about it quite a bit, is the idea of haptic imagery. So haptic imagery is basically when you see someone in an ad or you see someone in a video and they are touching and feeling and using a product. It's that connection between the person and the product that is like the haptic imagery. And when you show a person interacting with your product, you actually can increase that feeling of interactivity, a little bit of emotional bonding between your product and that potential customer. And studies have found that not only are people more likely to have some affection for the brand, remember the product, they're also more likely to buy it just by showing someone touching and feeling and using the product. So that's why I feel like these images, with the exception of number 2, should be much more about showing someone with athletic greens in their hand or the bottle in their hand, mixing up the actual drink, drinking it while putting an X on the calendar to show that they've been consistent, but really just increasing the amount of communication that you're getting from each one of these images. So let's keep going down to the bottom now. And in case you can't read it, at the very bottom, this green box says, keep in mind, what matters most is that you're making this an everyday routine. Adjust based on what your body needs. Now, this little bit of copy seems to undermine that core message of you need to have athletic greens or AG1 every single day. You need to make it a habit. They spent a whole email doing this, and then at the end, they sort of undermine themselves and go like, oh, wait, no, you don't really have to take it every day, but it's good if you take it every day. I actually think this isn't necessary unless it's like some kind of legal obligation that they have to say, because it's something that you're taking like a supplement. But if it's not a legal obligation, I would say a better use of this space is to use testimonials from people that say something like, oh, I took AG1 for 30 days straight and I felt better than I've ever felt in my life. So using that transformative social proof or testimonial can go a really long way to not only saying like, okay, here's how we make it a habit, but here's why we need to make it a habit, which is what is really missing for me in this email. So that's it. That is the end of our Athletic Greens email psychology breakdown. If you found this interesting and you want to do something similar for your brand, I do customer experience audits, not only on websites and landing pages, but also on emails, mobile apps, where I do a much more in-depth reaction, but sort of a similar thing that I've done here for your brand. There's a link in the description below. I would also suggest joining the free Choice Hacking newsletter if you haven't already. The link is in the description below. That's going to help you kind of understand some of these fundamental principles. You get many more case studies and examples of how we can use behavioral science and psychology in the real world. Thanks for joining, and I will see you in the next one.